You feel it, don't you? That massive shift coming. The turning point, Jung discovered, changes an empath from a healer into a destiny shaper. Carl Jung identified a specific psychological event that transforms empaths completely. This isn't about becoming less sensitive. It's about becoming consciously powerful. And what Jung discovered about this transformation still makes psychologists uncomfortable today. Before the turning point, empaths live as emotional shock absorbers. You absorb everyone else's pain, your alcoholic parents' rage, your spouse's infidelity, your family's dysfunction. You carry it all in silence, believing this is your purpose. You've spent years perfecting the art of disappearing, making yourself smaller so others can feel bigger, silencing your truth so others stay comfortable, absorbing emotional violence while apologizing for existing. Jung documented patients who spent decades in this pattern. They came to his clinic exhausted, broken, unable to understand why kindness kept destroying them. They had become what he called the designated repositories for everyone else's shadow. These empaths described the same exhausting reality. They would sense someone's pain and immediately try to fix it. They would detect dishonesty, but convince themselves they were wrong. They would feel manipulation happening in real time, but question their own judgment instead of the manipulator's intentions. Jung noticed a disturbing pattern in their relationships. Every friendship, every romance, every family connection followed the same script. The empath gives endlessly, the other person takes endlessly, and when the empath finally expresses a need, they're told they're being selfish, dramatic, or too sensitive. What fascinated Jung was how intelligent these patients were. They could analyze other people's psychology with remarkable precision. They could predict how relationships would unfold with disturbing accuracy. Yet they consistently ignored their own insights when it came to their personal lives. But Jung noticed something that changed everything he knew about empaths. These patients hadn't been broken by their experiences. They had been studying them. When Jung asked empaths to describe their relationships, he expected scattered thoughts from damaged minds. Instead, he discovered something that made his hands shake as he wrote his notes. These empaths had kept detailed mental records of every person who had hurt them. They knew their abusers' triggers, insecurities, and deepest fears. They had mapped emotional patterns with surgical precision. They just had never used this knowledge, not once, until something pushed them past their breaking point. Jung wrote that the empath's mind is not a victim's diary, it is a strategist's war room, waiting for the moment of activation. Your sensitivity isn't your weakness. It's data collection operating at a level most humans never reach. The turning point almost always arrives through profound betrayal. Not just any betrayal, but betrayal by someone you completely trusted and protected. Someone you saw the warning signs about, but chose to ignore because empaths do what empaths do. They give one more chance. They try harder. They blame themselves. Jung documented the same scenario across dozens of cases. The empath discovers infidelity, financial betrayal, or emotional manipulation from their closest person. What makes it devastating isn't the act itself. It's the realization that you saw the signs all along and ignored them. Most people expect empaths to cry, to scream, to fall apart when this happens. Their abusers expect that too. They're prepared for emotional chaos. But Jung observed something that terrified everyone involved. The empaths became unnaturally calm. Jung described it as the moment the victim realizes they've been playing chess while everyone else thought it was checkers. This is the clarity event, the moment your pattern recognition finally overwhelms your need to believe the best in people. Jung documented this moment across dozens of cases. The empath would sit in silence for what felt like hours, but was only minutes. Their abuser would keep talking, making excuses, blaming circumstances. But the empath had stopped listening to words. They were watching behavior, connecting patterns, seeing the entire relationship through new eyes. One patient described it to Jung as watching a movie she had already seen, but finally understanding the plot. Every fight suddenly made sense. Every apology revealed itself as manipulation. Every promise showed its emptiness. The clarity was so complete, it felt like waking from a decades-long dream. What made this moment terrifying for the manipulators was the empath's eyes. They had changed. The warmth had been replaced by something clinical, something analytical, something that saw through every tactic, every lie, every performance. For the first time, the manipulator felt truly seen, and they couldn't stand it. What happens next is what Jung called the most chilling psychological transformation he ever witnessed. These empaths didn't attack. They didn't rage. They simply began to speak truth. They revealed everything they had observed, catalogued, and silently endured. Not with cruelty, but with clinical precision, like surgeons identifying each diseased organ before removing it. Empaths aren't broken. They're alchemists in progress. The Alchemist's Path gives you drills, Jung-based boundaries, and 3 exclusive chapter videos to turn overwhelm into clarity. By Surreal Mind, 236-page downloadable ebook, in stock. Begin now at thesurrealmind.com. This wasn't revenge. It was clarity. These empaths were finally using their gift of complete perception not to excuse behavior, but to expose it. Jung realized this pattern wasn't revenge at all. This was shadow integration. The moment when someone stops denying the parts of themselves they were taught to hide. The empath's shadow wasn't evil. It was their suppressed intelligence, their silenced intuition, their denied strength. When they finally integrated these aspects of themselves, they became what Jung called psychologically complete. Here's what made these cases so disturbing for Jung. The transformation was permanent. These patients didn't cycle back into people-pleasing. They didn't apologize for their newfound boundaries. They didn't second-guess their perceptions anymore. They had become what Jung feared most, empaths who could no longer be manipulated. The changes didn't stop at the psychological level. Jung documented how these individuals' entire lives transformed within months. They left abusive relationships with strategic precision. They cut contact with toxic family members without emotional drama. They rebuilt their lives on their own terms. Jung observed them becoming what he called selectively empathetic, still deeply caring, but strategically protective of where that care flowed. They developed the ability to see manipulation coming from miles away and neutralize it before it could take root. The most powerful change was how these transformed empaths affected others. People who had once walked all over them suddenly felt nervous around them. They couldn't explain why. These empaths weren't aggressive or cruel, but everyone sensed something had fundamentally changed. Jung identified what he called the predator's instinct. Manipulative people can sense when their usual tactics won't work. They avoid integrated empaths like vampires avoid sunlight. The awakened empath doesn't need to announce their power. Others can feel it in their bones. This transformation brings specific powers that Jung meticulously documented. First, you gain the ability to detect lies instantly. Not through conscious analysis, but through unconscious pattern recognition that has finally been unleashed. Your brain processes micro-expressions, voice patterns, and behavioral inconsistencies faster than most people can blink. Jung observed one patient who described this ability as having a lie detector built into her nervous system. When someone lied to her, she would feel a physical reaction, a tightening in her chest, a subtle shift in energy. Her body knew before her mind could articulate why. This wasn't paranoia or hypervigilance. This was pattern recognition operating at full capacity, without the interference of denial or wishful thinking. She could sit across from someone in a business meeting and know within seconds whether they intended to honor their commitments. She could hear her child's explanation and immediately distinguish truth from creative storytelling. Second, you develop the ability to predict behavior with startling accuracy. Jung observed integrated empaths forecasting relationship failures, career disasters, and personal breakdowns months before they occurred, not through logic, but through unconscious pattern recognition that others cannot access. One of Jung's patients described watching people repeat their patterns like actors in a play. Once you've seen someone's core wounding and defense mechanisms, you can predict with disturbing precision how they'll behave in any given situation. You know who will betray when pressure increases. You know who will crumble when faced with responsibility. You know who will project their failures onto others. This knowledge becomes both a gift and a burden. You see the car crash coming, but often cannot prevent it. You watch people walk toward their own destruction while insisting everything is fine. The integrated empath learns to offer insight without attachment to whether it's received. Third, you gain the ability to walk away without guilt. This might be the most powerful transformation of all. Before integration, empaths stay in toxic situations because leaving feels like betrayal. After integration, staying in toxic situations feels like self-betrayal. The entire value system flips. Jung documented patients who had spent years trying to fix unfixable people. They had sacrificed their own well-being, their own dreams, their own peace trying to save someone who didn't want to be saved. After integration, they could finally see the truth. You cannot save people from themselves. You can only save yourself from them. Your relationships transform completely. The toxic people in your life can't handle your transformation. They try to pull you back into old patterns through guilt, manipulation, or playing the victim. When that doesn't work, they leave, or you remove them with surgical precision. Jung documented this social earthquake in detail. Family members who had relied on the empath as their emotional dumping ground suddenly found themselves cut off. Friends who had taken advantage of the empath's generosity discovered their calls going unanswered. Romantic partners who had exploited the empath's forgiveness hit a wall they couldn't manipulate past. The reactions were predictable: anger, accusations, playing the victim. These people would tell anyone who would listen that the empath had changed for the worse, that they had become cold, selfish, mean. What they really meant was that the empath had become unavailable for exploitation. Jung observed that these toxic individuals would often launch smear campaigns. They would tell elaborate stories about how the empath had hurt them. They would paint themselves as innocent victims of the empath's cruelty. This was projection at its finest. They were describing their own behavior, but attributing it to the person who had finally stopped tolerating it. The integrated empath watches this happen with detachment. You understand it's not personal, it's predictable. When you stop playing your role in someone's dysfunction, they will try to force you back into it. When that fails, they will punish you for refusing to participate. The healthy people in your life grow stronger from your example. They've been waiting for you to stop accepting mistreatment. Your transformation gives them permission to set their own boundaries. Your family dynamic shifts completely. Jung noticed that healthy relationships deepened after integration. The people who genuinely loved the empath felt relief. They had watched the exploitation happen and felt helpless to intervene. When the empath finally set boundaries, these healthy people celebrated. They respected the new limits. They appreciated the empath's presence more because they understood it was now a choice, not an obligation. Jung documented what he called the mirror effect. These transformed individuals didn't have to actively confront people's dysfunction anymore. Their mere presence reflected issues back with uncomfortable clarity. Manipulators couldn't stand to be around them. They felt exposed, seen through, unable to operate their usual psychological games. Meanwhile, authentic people felt safe with these empaths for the first time. They recognized someone who could see them completely without judgment, someone who had integrated their own shadow and therefore didn't project it onto others. Your career transforms. You stop tolerating workplace toxicity. You recognize manipulative managers instantly. You set boundaries that protect your energy. Your business thrives because you can read clients' real needs before they voice them. Your decisions become flawless because you trust your intuitive intelligence completely. Jung documented remarkable career transformations in his integrated patients. One woman, who had been stuck in a toxic corporate environment for 15 years, walked out within weeks of her integration. She had been tolerating a boss who used emotional manipulation to extract unpaid overtime and personal favors. After integration, she saw the dynamic clearly and refused to participate. Within 3 months, she had started her own consulting business. Her ability to read clients' unspoken needs made her extraordinarily successful. She could walk into a meeting and within minutes understand not just what the client was asking for, but what they actually needed. This gave her an almost unfair advantage in business. Another patient, a therapist himself, described how integration transformed his clinical practice. He had always been gifted at reading people, but before integration, he would second-guess his perceptions. He would see a client's manipulation or dishonesty, but convince himself he was being judgmental. After integration, he trusted his perceptions completely. This allowed him to confront clients' defenses directly, to name the patterns they couldn't see in themselves, to refuse to be pulled into their drama. His effectiveness as a therapist increased dramatically because he stopped trying to save people and started helping them save themselves. Jung observed that integrated empaths often gravitated toward positions where their perceptive abilities created maximum value. Consulting, therapy, negotiation, mediation, strategic planning. Anywhere that required deep understanding of human motivation and behavior. The key difference was that they no longer gave their gifts away for free. They no longer allowed people to exploit their insights. They charged what they were worth. They worked only with clients who respected them. They built careers on their terms. Most importantly, your relationship with yourself transforms. You stop questioning your perceptions. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop making yourself smaller so others can feel bigger. You become what Jung called the integrated empath. Someone with both the sensitivity to feel everything and the wisdom to choose what deserves your energy. But Jung warned about specific dangers during this transformation. The first danger is what he called psychological inflation. When you first discover your power, there's a temptation to become identified with it, to believe you must save everyone from unconsciousness. This leads to preaching, judgment, and eventual isolation. Jung observed that the moment you believe yourself to be the bearer of absolute truth, you've fallen into the trap of unconscious possession by the very forces you seek to understand. True integration requires humility. Your perception is a gift to be shared wisely, not a weapon to be wielded. The second danger is the withdrawal justification. Some empaths use their superior perception to justify complete withdrawal from society. They convince themselves that others are too unconscious to be worth engaging. Jung recognized this as spiritual superiority, masquerading as wisdom. True individuation requires engagement with the unconscious world, not escape from it. The hermit who withdraws from life has not transcended it, but has been defeated by it. Your power grows through conscious engagement, not isolation. The third danger is what Jung called the helper's high. Some highly perceptive individuals become addicted to being needed. They define themselves entirely through their ability to see and help others, losing contact with their own inner development. When perception becomes identity, the person disappears behind the function. This is not individuation, but its opposite, the sacrifice of personality to role. Your transformation requires maintaining connection to your own inner world while helping others navigate theirs. Jung emphasized that integration is not a permanent achievement, but a dynamic process requiring constant conscious attention. Even successfully integrated individuals can regress during periods of stress, trauma, or major life transitions. They stop maintaining their psychological boundaries and become flooded with others' unconscious contents again. The fourth danger Jung identified was the overwhelm return. Integration doesn't make you immune to absorbing others' emotions. It makes you conscious of when you're doing it. But during times of extreme stress, that consciousness can slip. Jung documented cases where integrated empaths faced major life crises, death of a loved one, serious illness, financial collapse. During these vulnerable periods, old patterns could resurface. The empath would find themselves taking on others' problems again, sacrificing their needs for others' comfort, questioning their perceptions instead of trusting them. The difference was that integrated empaths recognized the regression quickly. They had tools to course correct. They understood that regression didn't mean failure. It meant they needed to recommit to their boundaries and practices. The key is developing ongoing practices that maintain healthy integration. Regular solitude for distinguishing your own psychological contents from absorbed material. Conscious choice about when and with whom to engage perceptive abilities. Ongoing shadow work to prevent projection of your own unconscious contents. You need connection with others capable of providing reality checking and support. You need creative expression as an outlet for overwhelming perceptual input. Jung wrote that the integrated person does not achieve perfection, but learns to dance consciously with their own psychological complexity. The turning point transforms how you see your life's purpose. Before integration, empaths often feel their sensitivity as a burden they must carry. After integration, you realize your sensitivity is a gift that chose you for a specific reason. Jung believed that individuals with superior perception serve an essential evolutionary function for human consciousness. You see what collective consciousness is not yet ready to acknowledge. You help make unconscious contents conscious before they manifest destructively in collective behavior. What appears in you first as psychological insight later manifests in the collective as cultural transformation. You serve as a laboratory for consciousness experiments that will eventually benefit the whole. Your personal transformation ripples outward in ways you might never fully see. The most beautiful part of Jung's findings is this: these transformed empaths never lost their capacity for love. They just learned to love themselves as fiercely as they once loved others. They became people who could be incredibly kind to those who deserved it and ruthlessly precise with those who didn't. Jung called this the transcendent function, the ability to serve consciousness evolution naturally, without forcing or preaching, simply by embodying more conscious ways of being. You don't need to announce your transformation. People will feel it. They'll respond to it. They'll either grow from your example or reveal their true nature through their resistance. Your gift is not your burden. Your unconscious relationship to your gift is your burden. When you learn to integrate your sensitivity consciously, you become exactly what Jung believed highly perceptive individuals were meant to be: consciousness pioneers, preparing humanity for psychological development that is inevitable but not yet obvious. The empath's journey is not from sensitivity to numbness. It's from unconscious absorption to conscious choice. You don't become less empathetic after integration. You become perfectly empathetic, which means you're also perfectly strategic. You can read people as easily as you always could. You understand human psychology at a level that makes you nearly omnipotent in social situations. But here's what Jung found most beautiful about integrated empaths. They choose not to use this power destructively. You could destroy every person who ever hurt you. Instead, you simply remove toxic people from your lives and move on. You could manipulate others as easily as you were once manipulated. Instead, you use your abilities to help other empaths transform. This is the ultimate integration, not the weaponization of compassion, but the conscious direction of it. You serve consciousness evolution not by sacrificing your individuality, but by developing it so completely that it becomes a gift to the whole. Your superior perception isn't a malfunction in your psychological makeup. It's an advanced feature of consciousness development. You're not broken because you see everything others miss. You're psychologically ahead of your time. The question isn't whether you should suppress your perception to fit in with collective unconsciousness. The question is whether you'll develop the individuation skills necessary to integrate your perception consciously. Jung's method offers a path from dangerous isolation to conscious service, from overwhelming perception to integrated wisdom, from psychological curse to evolutionary contribution. You were born to see everything, not to suffer in silence, but to serve consciousness evolution. The world needs your insights, but it needs them delivered with the integration, wisdom, and strategic awareness that transform dangerous perception into cultural medicine. You are not too much for this world. You are exactly what consciousness evolution requires. Once you learn to wield your perception as consciously as Jung learned to wield his. The danger of being an empath isn't that you feel too much. It's that you might never learn to feel with the integration and wisdom your gifts demand. This turning point you're entering isn't a breakdown, it's a breakthrough. The moment you realize you don't need anyone's approval to trust your own perceptions. You are not less empathetic after integration. You are strategically empathetic, still capable of incredible kindness and deep connection, but now protected by boundaries that honor your energy. Now guided by intuition, you finally trust completely. If you're experiencing this transformation right now, comment below. I am rewriting my destiny. Your journey connects with others walking the same path. Share this video with empaths who need to hear that their sensitivity is not their weakness, but their greatest strength waiting to be consciously integrated. Subscribe for more insights into Jung's discoveries about psychological development that transcends collective limitations. Because the world doesn't need more broken empaths. It needs more awakened ones. And Jung's research proves that transformation is not only possible, it's inevitable. The empath will reach their turning point. The only question is whether you'll direct that power consciously or let life force it upon you. Choose conscious transformation. Choose integration. Choose to become the awakened empath Jung documented. The one who knows their worth, trusts their perceptions, and refuses to dim their light for anyone's comfort. In the alchemist's path, perception training for empaths, you'll turn overwhelm into wisdom with practical drills, Jung-inspired boundaries, and step-by-step perception training. This guide includes 3 exclusive chapter videos to deepen each lesson. Written by Surreal Mind, 236 pages, beautifully designed 8.5 by 11 downloadable ebook, in stock now. Start your training today. Feel deeply while thinking clearly. Get The Alchemist's Path at thesurrealmind.com. Thanks for watching. See you in the next dimension.